Welcome to Proles of the Roundtable.
Hello and welcome to Proles of the Roundtable, where we sit down, have a few beers, and talk leftist history. Please do us a favor and subscribe on your favorite podcast app and rate or review to help extend our reach. Before we get started, we wanted to thank our sponsor, without whom we wouldn't have these nice microphones. So big thanks to our sponsor, University of Chicago School of Economics. So I'm your host, 8Hop. I'm here tonight with Justin, James, and our good friend Ethan. What are you drinking tonight, Justin?
I am drinking Mountain Coast IPA from Lost Highway Brewing Co.
James?
I'm drinking water.
Liberals these days.
And I'm drinking a Leinenkugel Summer Shandy.
Oh, that's fancy.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's like lemon backwash. I love it. I don't know if it's fancy, though.
And I'm just drinking whiskey because I forgot to stop by the liquor store on my way home. Okie dokie, Pokey. What is our topic tonight?
Well, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Project Cybersyn, which is a computer project in Chile in the 1970s involving, like, it touches on topics of, like, planned economy, socialist internet, basically. It's the foundation of, like, the socialist internet.
Does it have left book?
It is the foundation of left book, so I guess in that sense...
Is this like the socialist Skynet?
No, it's not Skynet. Why does everyone keep saying Skynet? It's not Skynet. It's good, actually.
It's not a tumor.
Don't bullshit me. All right. So I mean, I'll just jump in. Obviously, if you have questions, if you're confused about something, feel free.
Well, so far I'm confused about everything, but you know.
Well, I'll get there. I'm gonna tell this kind of like as a story a little bit. So the first thing I will say as a preface for this is that I'm not gonna talk a ton about like the specific I'm not gonna talk a ton about like the general Chilean Revolution, like the Allende years, because there's a really good episode of Revolutionary Left Radio that they did last month as of this recording that was so much better than I could get into, and it was very broad-ranging. It talked about a lot of the stuff that I would just be rehashing here, so go listen to that. I'm talking about a kind of very specific aspect of the Chilean Revolution. But anyway, so just to preface that, so as we all know, or probably all know, there was in 1973, September 11th, there was a coup in Chile where they deposed the democratically elected president Salvador Allende. And
rest in peace, never forget.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a story. I don't know how true this is, but there's a story that after the coup, so like the military forces, that when they were busting into the presidential palace, they found
instituting democracy.
Yeah, free market. It's great stuff. They busted into some of these government offices, and they found this weird control room. It was hexagonal. It had big screens on the walls. It had these 7 like curved swivel chairs with buttons.
It looks so cool. Yeah, we'll make it the photo for the episode.
These 7 like swivel chairs with buttons on them, and they couldn't figure out what this thing was, and so they found some government workers who explained it, and then they destroyed the place because they weren't interested in it. What this was it was the headquarters of Project Cybersyn, which was a sort of early socialist internet specifically designed to run Chile's economy.
Holy shit! Yeah, this place looks amazing. Like you were.
It's like Star Trek.
Yeah, very much.
It looks like the Enterprise control room.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll get to it. But
I just want to point out real quickly, like how quickly the capitalists just destroyed this room, any sort of socialist progress, and then they will turn around and say like, oh yeah, socialism sows the seeds of its own decay.
I'll get there. I mean, the Chilean like example is particularly galling, just because they did everything the way they were supposed to, quote unquote. Like Allende was elected democratically, like huge popular support. When they nationalized things, they offered the companies most of the times more than it was worth in reimbursement.
That happened in Cuba and Iran. That
Exactly.
happens like in every
Yeah,
country.
exactly. But so like they're doing things the way that that people would say like, oh, you need to take power this way. They did, and they still got destroyed.
Rosa would be proud.
So anyway, so
And really sad.
yeah, so basically, I'm gonna give a little bit of context on the history of like what they were trying to do by planning, like running the economy of Chile, and so I'm gonna talk. It's gonna kind of get into a little bit of economics here, so just bear with me. I'm gonna try and make this as interesting as possible.
I'm
not
sure
an
our sponsor
economist.
will be proud.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, but as Marxists in general, we have shared. There's basic principles of like what we would call a just economy, and a lot of it comes from Marx, obviously. And so Marx says, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Like that's a good thing to strive for. And then another thing is that workers, they own their labor, all the value that they produce is theirs. And so there are various arguments about why this can't work. Some of them are like, it's based on human nature, like, oh, humans can't do that. And there's plenty of anthropological evidence which suggests otherwise. I'm not going to get into that. But some of them there's logistical and technological. Like, how could we make all of those decisions, all of the information that's involved in an economy? And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on. So I'm just going to do a little thought experiment here. So right now, the computer we're recording this on, so just think about what makes that up. I mean, there's so many pieces and components in there. But then you've also got the raw materials for all those pieces. You've got plastic, you've got metal, you've got rare earth minerals, you've got all of these things making that up. And then you've also involved in getting that computer here to where we're using it right now. There's like fuel to get it here, fuel to get the raw materials to make those pieces, fuel to get the pieces to the factory where they assemble the whole thing. There are maybe, like, if you think about it, for a complex product like a computer, there are probably millions of people involved in this doing specific little things all over the world to make this one product. And so one of the big questions of economics is like, who told them to do that? So usually in like a capitalist economy, or in our capitalist economy, their boss probably told them to do that. But like
Jeff Bezos.
Right, Jeff Bezos told them to do that. But how does their boss know like what to make? Like, why this computer? How do we get everything where we need to go?
Because they're gods, Ethan.
Right. Well, so in the world economy, like things need to be like, we need to make things, and choices have to be made about what you're going to make, how you're going to make it, and what you're going to do with it, like where you're going to send it. And if say you have a factory, you have to choose whether to build one thing over a different thing. So basically, there were these assholes in the early 20th century named Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek.
I don't trust anybody with a first name Ludwig.
Well,
and
Beethoven was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
Wittgenstein,
true.
I don't think was important to philosophy. No, don't trust anybody with von, because they're an asshole. Because it's like their means are a lord.
Okay.
No, but so then you get so these two economists who right libertarians love.
Oh, my CC, absolutely.
Oh, it's awful. So they termed this. I mean, this is a thing that exists. They termed it the economic calculation problem, which is that problem of like, how do you calculate how to get things where, how to choose what to make, those kinds of things. And they suggested there is no way to do this efficiently or rationally from like
The
a centralized
invisible hand
source.
does it.
Well, yeah, and it's based off of Adam Smith and that whole like school of classical and neoclassical economics. It's like hundreds of years. So, so for these two guys, their suggestion, which has been taken to heart by pretty much all of neoclassical economics and most of the world's economy, is that markets are the way that we rationally get economic information between like producers, consumers, firms, and everybody else who's involved in the economy.
That's how we get 16 of the same circle.
Well, yeah, basically, but
That's why we don't have the people's deodorant.
not yet, not yet.
Antiperspirant. There's a difference.
But yeah, but so according to them, kind of capitalism, like the market is a computer. It's like an analytic engine. You're putting all this data in, and it computes it, and it gives you an output. And the tool they use for this is prices. Are you following me so far?
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay.
It's like the capitalist ideal, like Eagle Eye machine.
Eagle Eye machine. What is that?
Yeah. You never saw that movie?
I don't think so. What is that?
It's like the supercomputer. I think I'm thinking of the right movie. It's a supercomputer that like watches everything ever and is
It's
able
got
to
Comrade
obtain all
Shia LaBeouf in it.
Yeah, it's
Oh
true.
shit. Okay. It's like a
It's a
like big data.
supercomputer that can not only collect all of the information but make accurate predictions based on it, including like how every single person that it has access to the information of will react to certain stimuli.
Huh.
It's a really interesting movie.
Well, I mean, so I'm going to get into not that exact thing, but like something similar just in terms of like collection of data and stuff. But okay, so getting back to that, so we've got the main tools that markets use are prices, where the idea is you've got enough people are willing to pay for like a thing that you can charge this price, but you can't charge a higher price because not enough people are going to pay for that or whatever. That's the idea, and that's how you get quantitative data about like value, quote unquote, in close to real time, if not like exactly up to with the internet, it's very close to real time at this point. But yeah, so it's this really complicated balance. There's a shitload of like Marxist and Marxian, I think is the term, economists who have written a lot about this, who can explain this much more than I can. I'm sure I'll give some just input in the show notes. But
we're just a couple working class stiffs here.
I mean, sure, but like, so as a Marxist, I don't think that what the stuff I'm talking about, I don't think that's something that ultimately leads to like economic justice and parity. I mean, it clearly doesn't. But so then in the 50s, there were a couple of economists, and I didn't write down their names because I'm an idiot. But it doesn't. I'm sure you could find them. There are a couple economists. They found this equation, this proof that said that free markets are eventually going to balance out. Free markets, quote unquote, meaning like no government regulation, complete like just firms and consumers and producers like freely exchanging wealth and the free market, which obviously is not a fucking thing. But
right. They found a proof that suggested that Atlas at some point would shrug.
Well, so they found this equation that proved if you do all the math, like it proves that free markets are eventually going to balance out and achieve the maximum possible allocative efficiency, which means that things basically get where they need to go and people get the things they need as well as it can, in that you can't make one thing better without making another thing worse somewhere.
So
down
we
the
would
line.
achieve balance.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's an equilibrium. It's called general equilibrium. It's an economic thing, but. And so this leads to this idea that prices, whereas Adam Smith back in the 1700s was like, oh yeah, when we have prices for goods and stuff, that's just like a nice thing so that it's not crazy and like people can figure out what's going on. As opposed to that, these neoclassical economists are like, no, prices are necessary, and there's something that we can meddle with only at our own peril because it is like a mathematical. it's like messing with like a mathematical theorem. It's like trying to change. Trying to say 2 + 2 = 5. Like, you can't change it. It's math.
The real genius is not actually doing anything.
Exactly.
Galaxybrain.in.
Galaxy Brain, exactly.
Get fucking woke.
It's laissez-faire. But so then around the collapse of the Soviet Union, some Western economists, yeah, I know, did a couple of studies that showed that centrally planned economies, like a lot of what was happening in the Soviet states, were at least as allocatively efficient, in that they were at least as efficient in getting stuff from this factory or whatever to people who needed it, and like people had such and such good. Like obviously that wasn't perfect, but neither, as they found, it's not in capitalist societies either, and these were at least, if not more, allocatively efficient as market economies. And so it turns out that proof that I just mentioned, it only works under like very specific circumstances. So it's ridiculous to like extrapolate a whole world economy based on this thing. It's just, it capitalism only works on paper. Basically, is what I'm going to say. Is what it turns out.
Wow.
Capitalism only works in theory.
Exactly. So then that brings us back around to Chile. So Allende, he was a doctor, and in the 60s he started running for president a couple times. But the CIA, like, he was a Marxist from the very beginning. Like, he was at the very beginning, he was campaigning on, hey, I'm a socialist. I'm gonna do socialism if you elect me. And so the CIA was like, oh shit, we can't do this. So so they were like financing opponents, like spreading grassroots like anti-socialist propaganda, all of this stuff. And so
Never.
Right, I know this. Our beloved friends at the Central Intelligence Agency.
Hard to believe that the people, hell bent on freedom and freedom of speech would force propaganda down people's throats. Like you have this.
It's never happened. Like, literally, listen to any of the other episodes we've ever done.
So in 1970, he was elected through this mass grassroots campaign. They campaigned on socialism, nationalizing the economy, like explicitly saying, we're going to do this if you elect us. And like people were like, this is fucking awesome.
And the CIA shot itself.
Well, and he campaigned on workers being part of like the economic planning of the country. Yeah.
What were the conditions under which he took power?
I mean, not.
Oh.
They were a little better than a lot of Latin American countries at the time, which is not saying a whole lot because conditions in Latin America were not great because there'd been a history, about 20 years of foreign intervention, lots of wars, military juntas, things like that. But it was a stratified, plutocratic country, and so Allende was able to empathize with people and say, like, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and involve you as best I can in changing this. And people were like, let's do it. And it was a really it was a big mass movement that got him elected. And so, in the U.S. they were not very happy about it. There are a lot of recordings of like Nixon flipping out about this.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Have you said anything, Ron, with regard to the ITT in Chile? How did you handle it?
The State Department dealt with that today.
Oh, they did?
Yes, sir.
What did they do? Deny it?
They denied it, but they were cautious on how they dealt with the Corey statement because they were afraid that might backfire.
What did Corey say?
Well, Corey said that he had received instructions to do anything short of a Dominican type, alleged to have said that.
Corey did?
Right.
So how'd that get out? He put that out?
Well, Anderson received that from some source. Al Haig is sitting with me now.
Oh, yeah.
It was a report contained in an IT&T thing, but
Well, he was instructed to.
Well, but
but he just failed. That's his main problem. He should have kept Allende from getting in.
So he was elected in 1970, and so by the end of 1971, the Chilean government had taken control of more than 150 different enterprises in the country, including 12 of the 20 largest companies in Chile. They nationalized them, and they were trying to, and so they had all these factories, they had all these industries and stuff, and they were trying to figure out what to do with them, and so they decided they needed to design a system that would allow for a kind of bottom-up central planning, central planning that involved information on the floor of the factory trickling up and then distributing information all over the place.
Trickle up economics.
Something like that.
Comrade economics.
And so this one government worker named Fernando Flores, he contacted this British cyberneticist named Stafford Beer. So if I say cybernetics, what do you think of?
We can build them faster,
stronger,
iRobot, better.
iRobot?
$1 million man.
$6 million.
Oh, was it $6 million?
$6 million for a man in this economy?
yeah. His wealth or his.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, a lot of people think about prosthetic limbs and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So. Well, I mean, it also involves artificial intelligence and that sort of thing, but no, cybernetics basically as a field is crazy broad. It just means it's regulatory systems. It's the study of figuring out how to get systems to work, take inputs and different structures and using feedback and measuring that feedback through sensors and using that to make changes based on all these things. So computers use cybernetics a lot because obviously inputs that you're putting input and it's getting information from the internet.
It's just algorithms.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's a huge part of it. I mean, like, brains are cybernetic systems in that, like, you could say that a brain is just a machine to, like, regulate inputs.
In a lot of ways, it is very reactive.
It's taking in information from all of our senses and then processing that information and telling the rest of the body what to do in response to that.
Exactly.
That's cybernetics right there. So something that comes up a lot as an example is like a thermostat in a building. So you've got a thermostat and you can program a thermostat to say that, like, okay, if it gets below 60 degrees, turn the heat on, get it up to 70. If it gets above 75 degrees, put the air conditioning on until it gets down to like 70 or whatever it is. And it uses thermostats in different rooms. That's a basic example of cybernetics. So the government of Chile, they contacted this guy, Stafford Beer, who was a theorist of cybernetics from England. And they said, hey, can you help us figure out a way to plan our economy? And he was like, shit, this is awesome. Well, and it's interesting because he was not a socialist. Like, he was working he was a super wealthy guy. He was mostly working with businesses, using cybernetics to make their businesses run more efficiently. And he made a ton of money for doing this. And then they said, hey, we're trying to plan our economy. Can you help us out? And they were originally just expecting like him to send a member of his team over, but he was so interested in the idea that he came over himself. And for like 3 years, he went back and forth between London and Santiago doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's a super interesting guy. I'll say a little bit more about him later, like what happened to him a little later.
Sure.
But so basically, they came up with this thing called Project Cybersyn, which is a combination of the words cybernetics and synergy. Okay, so here's how the system basically worked. So they had daily access to mostly factory, like production data was sent to a central location, and they were sending information like the raw material output, production output, number of like worker absentees, that kind of stuff.
I can't imagine like how difficult that process alone was, like trying to get accurate information or trying to get all the information.
Especially because under socialism, nobody actually wants to work, so nobody's actually showing up to work.
So I mean, you're making a joke, but like that is one of the areas that this didn't work out, was getting regular up to date information from factory workers or from the people sending those from the factories was a challenge because. Some of them
like fucking 1970 or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was like 1971, 1972. Some of them didn't they just didn't think it was responsive enough. They just didn't see the need to do it quickly enough. But there were challenges, and I'll get to those near the end. But basically, so they sent all this information in so that they could take it all, crunch it, predict and direct future behavior. So it went back to this operations room that I mentioned before, and it was for decision making. They had these 7 chairs facing inward, no tables, because they didn't want like you consulting notes or whatever. They needed to sit there and talk and make these decisions. And so they designed it to be a combination of like government officials, like factory workers, union representatives in this table, 7 people, so you could vote and have a majority.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
It's almost like socialism is a dictatorship.
Well, I mean, that was, yeah. And so they, it was for decision making, and there were screens in the walls so that you could have visualization of the data that was coming in. So you could, and there were buttons on the chairs so that you could press a button, change a slide, like bring up the slide you wanted, and be like, oh, and we can look at this and this. And the idea was that eventually they would be able to show real-time information on that, but they didn't have that at that point. So the question is, did all this work through computers? And the answer is no, it worked through computer. They had one.
Single computer.
Well, so there were about 50 computers in Chile, like the whole country during Allende's time. Most of them were really outdated, and they only had one that they really, like one, we'd call it a supercomputer that they had access to. Only one thing that could actually do all of the stuff it was expected to do, take all that information. And so they asked IBM, they were like, hey, would you sell us like a nice new computer? And IBM was like, no, they were worried about getting nationalized. And plus like there was this, they call it an invisible blockade. that the U.S. was doing to Chile during once Allende got elected. They cut off foreign aid. They made sure they didn't get any loans from the World Bank or like various other development banks. Reduction of lines of credit from U.S. banks to imports. They made it so that they made it really hard to import like mechanical parts for like factories, tractors, cars, that kind of stuff.
Because socialism will fail so bad on its own that you have to do all of these things to make sure that it fails. Otherwise, it will fail.
And that's what's and again that's so frustrating because this is they were doing everything the way you're supposed to, the way that they say you're supposed to, and then they still
They weren't like violently revolutionary.
No, exactly. Like they literally got elected democratically, but then as soon as it happened, they were like, "Oh, well, if people realize that they can just vote themselves into socialism, we're fucked."
People will vote themselves into socialism.
Yes, exactly. It turns out if you give people,
if you give
people the
can be
option,
in control of their work.
Well, it turns out that if you give people the option, like something that like benefits the proletariat's material interest, they'll go for it. Turns out, but
I'm sure Pinochet got loans, right?
Oh, constantly, yes. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Capitalism needs loans.
I'm just getting sad now.
Capitalism needs all the loans.
Yeah,
and
no, but so
investors.
Chile they just basically had one computer. They had two, but they only had like two in Santiago, but they only had one that they could actually use for this kind of stuff. So here's what they did: they put something called a telex in every factory they could find. So they found this a warehouse full of 500 telexes that the previous government had purchased and didn't know what to do with. And so a telex is basically a typewriter hooked up to a phone line. So say I'm hooked up. So say that
that fax machine though.
Well, it's like live almost. So say that I'm in Santiago and Justin's in Valparaiso across the country. So I'm gonna type "Hi Justin" on my typewriter, and so he's over, and that sends a signal, and then his typewriter types like without him touching it, types "Hi Justin" out
taking
there.
the red pill.
Right. So it's just basically it's like a really early form of like instant messaging.
And then Justin wakes up and he has like a wire in the back of his skull. And
yeah, exactly. No, but so yeah. So the idea was that they would put one of these telexes in every like big factory or big production plant or something like that, and so
they would IM the central planner.
Yeah,
like
basically,
winky smiley face. Things are looking great. heart emoji, heart emoji, heart emoji.
I want like there has to have been stories like that. Like, I cannot imagine that
That's
there
so
were
funny
like,
though.
Especially so like I've been reading Shay's motorcycle diaries, and you know his experiences going through Chile and the people that he met. I cannot imagine something like that not happening.
What year was
there? It was
not
in the 50s.
That was in the 50s,
right?
Okay.
But still, these people are so lively, and they have they have so much culture that I can't imagine. You know, just information coming.
I bet
through
there. I mean,
all
I'm sure there
times.
were some fun stories.
They
like
were
that,
they were
but I
very
don't know any of them.
shenaniganous at points, as all humans are really.
Right, but yeah.
Humans do love their shenanigans.
Yeah,
Facts.
but so
I'm a shenanigan connoisseur.
But so yeah, so the idea was so you're at your factory and you take the day's numbers at like 4:00 or whatever. You're like, okay, this is how many workers we had, this is all the stuff we made, this is the stuff that came in, like the resource that came in, whatever. You type all of that into your telex, and that was connected to a telex in Santiago. And so that would go to Santiago, and then the folks in Santiago would take all of the stuff from all these factories, all of the typed pages from these factories, and then start plugging it into their supercomputer. And it's just basically like big, just huge input-output tables, just like putting in all these numbers, and the computer crunches it and looks
it just inputs all of the variables into an algorithm.
Basically, yeah, and it puts so they put in all the data, and then like they program the computer to look for like inefficiencies or like places where there may be a problem down the line, or they could say, hey, what do we need to change if we want to make we want to increase production of copper or something like that. Then they could they take the information that's in the computer, they would process it, and then they would relay that information back to the factories. And so this was really interesting because like operators in the factory, there are like thousands of different variables, indexes that are part of what you're talking about in your factory, stuff that's going on. So you had to pick like 10 or 12, just like the most important ones. So this isn't like 100% top-down control from the government. They didn't have the time or the technology to do that. This was like they're trying to convey the most important information that they can, send that there, and then that would get crunched and then sent back.
They're in the elementary stages of developing this, and
Well, they were in the elementary stages of development of their entire country, basically, right?
Well, sure,
true.
and I mean, yeah, in the 70s, like our computers in like the world were not amazing. I mean, like
Exactly.
they still did.
Exactly. But so like, but my point is how much they did with so little.
Well, and so here's the thing. Like all of this started in 1971. They only had until September of 1973. That's the thing. We never got to see how this like worked. But there was a thing where so there were 4 levels that they broke the economy into. There was like the firm, like so the factory or the facility or whatever. Then there was the branch, you had the sector, and then there was the total, like the whole country. And so if there was a problem at the firm level, it was up to the firm. They had a certain amount of time to deal with that. And if they didn't, then it went up to the branch, and then they had to take care of it. And like so the idea was that you would take care of your problems in your factory on your factory level, and only if it made it all the way up the chain would the government be like, okay, here's how you fix this. So that's how they were trying to keep this sort
So
of.
what you're trying to tell me is that socialism is when the government does stuff.
Well, no, this is exactly so. I mean, no, yes, like, no, no, this is exactly like socialism. If we're talking about workers being in control of their production, like the things that. Like their labor, this was exactly that, and it's tying the workers being in production of their labor to the good of the overall nation.
Yeah.
And then their democratically elected government does stuff, and that's a dictatorship apparently.
Well, yeah, that's problematic. But so here's how this here's how this worked basically. There was an engineer who worked on Cybersyn in 1977, wrote an essay, and so basically he said, so let's say so you send a team to like a canning plant, which they've got a list of technical questions like what supplies, like tin cans, sugar, fruit, are critical to its activities. Are there statistics that offer like an accurate snapshot of what's happening there? Like how much fruit do you make? How many cans are in the line? Like that kind of thing. And then are there machines that might automatically provide those indicators? Like the thing that the machine that seals the cans. Is there a counter on that? You can see how many it does. And so suppose, yeah. And so they take all these answers to these questions and they put together this flow chart that starts with suppliers, ends with customers, like, and it's, and so they would take that and suppose that the state planners wanted to expand cooking capacity in this canning plant by like 20%. So what they would do is they would ask all these questions and they would get this model, and that model would determine if you could get 20% more.
So you're looking for what is bottlenecking the production.
Well, right. So say like you've got a boiler there and it's at 90% of its capacity, and increasing the amount of canned fruit would mean going like to 140%. Like obviously that's not going to work. So you can generate a statistical profile for the kind of boiler you need, and then you can find that one and send it to that factory so they can do that. Yeah, and so. And so Stafford Beer, again, the guy running this whole thing or designing this whole thing, he said it's perfectly possible to capture data at the source in real time and to process it instantly, but we don't have the machinery for such instant data capture, nor do we have the sophisticated computer programs that would know what to do with such a plethora of information if we had it. So so they are bumping up against the limitations of the technology. I mean. This was 50 years ago.
I bet we can have an app for that now.
I mean, well, and so that's what I mean. That's something I'm going to mention. I'm going to get to in a little bit. Just like comparing like some of the computers in the past to now. Like, yes, you could do a lot of this calculating on like your phone, probably, or a network of phones. You can do it in the cloud. But so like I said, we didn't have a ton of
eliminate cloud hoarders.
Well,
Cloud hoarders get the wall. 1917 dead
No.
cloud hoarders.
What we're doing is we're going to nationalize Amazon Web Services.
Okay.
That's what's going to happen. No, so the biggest success of
Fuck the
Cybersyn,
information kulaks.
basically. The biggest success of Project Cybersyn was in 1972 was breaking a strike. Now hold on, I know that sounds bad, but listen to me. So in 1972, there were a bunch of small business owners all throughout the country. They were worried about getting their shit nationalized. And so they got a bunch of truck drivers who were worried about getting their trucks nationalized. They all went on strike, and the truckers blocked the roads and like key supply arteries in and out of Santiago. And so from what I can tell, most of the work, there's no way to quantify this obviously, but from what I've heard, most of the like people who didn't own their own businesses were supportive of Allende and not the strikers. But so what they did was they used Cybersyn to coordinate shipments of food and fuel to break the strike. So
to give the strikers what they needed.
No, because the strikers were trying to prevent fuel and food from getting into Santiago and the other main cities, and they used Cybersyn to coordinate the food and fuel they already had to outweight the strikers, basically, to break the strike. And so here's the thing: like the strikers were like small business owners and a lot of reactionaries. However, so it's a weird thing. Like, I'm not going to defend 100% of what happened in Chile. There's I think that's just a good materialist analysis. So I'm not gonna defend 100% of. I don't know the specifics of the strike here. I don't know the material conditions on the ground. But like, when you've got a socialist government, when you're operating under socialism and Marxism, there are contradictions in any economy, a socialist economy included. I mean, we saw this with the Soviet Union. We see this in Cuba. We've seen this everywhere. There are contradictions, and you work. Like, the end goal is that we're continually trying to resolve the contradictions. So this is a contradiction, I think. I don't know that they used this socialist central planning thing to break a strike. Maybe the strike was run by like the middle class,
Right, the bourgeois,
the
the petty
petty
bourgeois.
bouge. Yeah, but
The bouge.
petty bouge. Like it might have been. I don't know the details, but in any case, like it gave an example that like this was a powerful piece of technology that, given time to develop, probably could. Like, this is one drastic example that it worked in terms of like getting goods where it needed to go, efficiently allocating resources. So I don't know. But so yeah, the control room was running for like 6 months before the coup. So we just don't know. We don't know. So what were the problems with this? The biggest one is what I mentioned before. Like, there was a lack of quick and accurate information from factory managers. Like, it would be really hard to get up-to-date information. So one example I remember reading was that there was a manager of a coal factory, or like a coal plant that was like packaging and shipping coal somewhere, and there was a shortage of coal showing up at his plant, and he was like, what the hell's the problem with this? And he went straight to the mine, figured out there was some issue there, and like got the coal coming back on. A couple days later, information comes down from Cybersyn, hey, you may have a coal shortage coming up pretty soon here, just because the information hadn't been like sent quickly enough that it wasn't responsive enough based on the
Technology level.
Technology, exactly. And so that is a problem. Another thing is, some people were saying, like, are they collecting too much data? Like, they were worried.
Big Brother.
Well, so there were people, like, there was a Chilean science fiction novel in like the 80s or 90s or whatever, which was an alternate history where Allende wasn't deposed, and Cybersyn became this huge thing that like controlled everyone's elements of everyone's lives. And it's interesting because Stafford Beer, his son Simon, I think, his son designed this device that you would put in. The idea was you'd put it in everyone's house, and it was like it was a meter, and people like based on a meter for people's happiness, and they would adjust that in their they would just have a knob on their wall, and they'd say, I'm feeling like whatever today, and they'd put
I'm
that
7
there.
happy today.
Yeah, something like that. And so they'd send all of that, and then it would allow the central office or whatever, the collecting all the happiness, happiness points, to get a sense of like how other people are feeling.
Idea, especially for like our English listeners, like the idea of like walking into somebody's house and be like, "Yeah, where's your happy knob?"
Let me crank that. Hey-o.
And so there is an argument to be made that this was sort of the introduction of like big data in the
Big data.
Well, in terms of like collecting a ton of information about a bunch of different things in order to make decisions. I mean, they're usually business decisions, obviously. They're usually ways to extract more capital from you. But like that's the idea, is that like Facebook is looking at when you're posting, they're looking at what you're posting, they're looking at who you're friends with, all of these things. Like they're collecting all these things in order to take it's
all of these complex competing algorithms the developers at this point don't even know how they work anymore.
Oh, sure. Well, it's a cybernetic system that's gotten out of hand. Like it's a cybernetic system in that you've got self-reinforcing like these sorts of these sorts of posts generate certain responses, and then those responses cause these kind of all of this kind of stuff.
In a way, it's the most innocent version of Skynet.
I mean, it's not innocent in that Facebook's making.
It's more innocent than wiping out the entire world.
Well, sure. I mean, Zuck's not there yet, but we'll see.
But
they're obviously they're using these algorithms. They're using all this data to make money off of us. That's not in question. Like that's obviously things happening. And so it's been argued that this was kind of the introduction of the socialist origins of big data, which is interesting. But and then
so what you're telling me is the socialists beat the capitalists to yet another form of technology.
If they had Alex Jones in Chile, though, it would never have succeeded.
Project Cybersyn is run by the lizard people and
they're turning the economy plan.
Buy my testosterone.
Male vitality syndrome is, turn your happiness knob up to 10.
Cybersyn tells you 12 tablets a day.
Yes, exactly. I like to eat. I like to plan economies.
I like cocaine.
Yes. Alex Jones, come on the show. All right.
The next episode will be brought to you by Alex Jones.
Infowars.com. All right.
Brought to you in part by Gay Frogs.
I am pro gay frogs.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so another problem, which has been mentioned a little bit here, is that the technology just wasn't there. So like when you look at the what was going on with the operations room. So they've got these screens there. They're supposed to be the live, the idea was that eventually it'd be live feeds. It was slides, and so there wasn't live information. They actually had a team of like graphic designers who would constantly be drawing and redrawing new slides, and you'd have to go behind the wall and like change them out. Because there were wires that ran from the chairs down through the floor back up to like swipe through.
I'm imagining like a Wizard of Oz scenario, kind of, or a Wizard of Oz room where like you have to like go behind the curtain and there's like a bunch of people writing out.
So just like at their desks, like drawing stuff, taking. I mean, it was I don't know that they were like living in there, but they did have a team of graphic designers who were constantly like taking information and trying to draw it in like understandable, like easy ways. So
they were PowerPoint artists.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But so anyway, so that kind of gave it was a futuristic design that was like.
It's like the origin of the Jetsons. Like if socialism had survived, we would be living in like a Jetsons world right now.
Well, yeah, and so it's interesting in that like
or thrived. It survived, but if socialism had been allowed to thrive,
right? Exactly. I mean, so I think one of the designers is this Italian guy. I think he's still alive, but he was saying like we weren't trying to do a futuristic thing. We were just trying to like do something cutting edge that was using the design principles.
Right. That's how progress works. It's one tiny step after another, but those add up so fast.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting in that, like, there are all kinds of places that have like all kinds of places now that have screens that have live information. I mean, like you look at traffic planning, you look at stock exchanges, you look at
the budgeting app on my phone gets live updates from my fucking bank account.
Exactly. And exactly. So it's just the technology wasn't there, but this was again 50 years ago. Yeah. So and something that
90s kids remember that.
Something they did know about though was they had all of the chairs had like an ashtray built in for your cigar and like a cup holder.
Because real socialists smoke cigars. Not
well,
cigarettes.
Stafford Beer really liked cigars and whiskey, so he was like, we gotta have this in here because like everyone's sitting there, you're smoking your stogie, you're drinking your whiskey while you're planning the economy.
There is nothing more socialist than that.
So yeah, but so here I want to give a little more context. Just kind of talk about specifically like so Chile was not the first socialist country to try an economic planning thing like this. The Soviet Union had been doing it since the 20s.
Oh shit.
Well, except they were doing it with pen and paper and it wasn't working great. So Russia in the 30s, they didn't have a labor shortage. They had a ton of people where their problem was they had a lack of like machine tools. And so their big economic problem was figuring out how to what was the best way to like distribute like workers and figure out like where to send workers and how should they be doing what to maximize use of these tools.
Their biggest problem was information analysis.
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. And so then you had this guy named Kantorovich who I think he started working at like I want to say a paper mill. Oh, it might have been
Russians
a plywood.
Russians are so good at having badass names. Like,
Kantorovich. He might have been a plywood mill. I'm not working at a plywood mill. I'm not sure, but he was so during this time he was doing a lot of work on like optimal allocation of resources, and so he invented linear programming, which sounds really basic, but it's basically just a mathematic technique for maximizing or minimizing a linear function of several variables like output or cost. So like when you've got
that sounds super simple.
Yeah, exactly. But this guy invented it. So he invented linear programming. Yeah, it's how do you get the best outcome based on it's all using like input output tables. Like how do you get the best outcome based on the things you put in? Yeah,
it's any city builder video game.
I mean, kind of, yeah. He invented SimCity.
Comrade Kantorovich,
yes. Yeah, and so he came up with a way, like a practical way to figure out the best use of different machines to do different jobs, that sort of thing. And so there are millions of products that the Soviet economists, like the Soviet planners, were basing off of. There are millions of equations that you're going to be making when you're planning an economy, like millions of different inputs and outputs, and it boggles the mind to think about. And
my
they
mind is thoroughly boggled.
Well, yeah, because they're
not hard.
At the beginning, like they had
fact.
when did they invent computers? Like the 30s?
I don't know.
Like an actual computer, maybe the 40s.
Doctor, not a scientist.
Okay, Google. When was the first computer invented?
1936.
Oh, there you go.
According to Computer Hope, the Z1 was created by German Konrad Zuse in his parents' living room between 1936 and 1938.
That is the most
mechanical binary programmable computer and the first really functional modern computer.
Okay.
This is the most computer nerd story
That's
ever.
wild.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Invented in 1936 by a guy in his parents' or in his bedroom or what?
Parents' living room.
House.
No, that's awesome. Good for him. No, but so I
wonder what the first algorithm was.
Well, I mean, like when you think about an
awesome,
algorithm, that's like when you think about it, an algorithm is
It's
not
really
like,
anything.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things. But so basically, so they're doing all these equations like on pencil and paper in the 30s because they don't have computers. Like so they've just got stacks and stacks of
stacks on stacks on stacks.
Well, just like books and tables and yeah, and I'm sure they're doing that awful like Cyrillic cursive and
Oh man, that's rough.
Yeah, that bullshit we all had to learn in 3rd grade.
Oh yeah, it's Cyrillic cursive. Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely learned that.
It's Russian cursive.
Yeah, so Soviet economic planning was basically they were taking like the big outputs from like the main industries. And they were trying to figure out how do we spread that out amongst various industries, and then working down like how do we spread that out. So by the 1950s, the Soviets, they were planning for 10,000 different products. And there were 30,000 factories subject to planning, and they were doing this all manually, all by hand.
Holy shit!
So 10,000 products is not that many. So right now, Amazon has 490 million products or something. On
damn!
Well, right.
They don't make any of them.
Right, fact.
Well, sure, but well, and I'll talk about Amazon in a minute here.
Does
this is good.
Make the Kindle though?
I'm sure
They don't make it.
They hire someone else.
Outsource it to somebody else.
They put their name on it. Yeah, but so anyway, it's all manually done. And so then they started to get a couple of computers in the 50s and 60s. And so the Soviet computers they're using to do economic calculation in the 50s, they're at a megabyte of storage.
How do they even do that?
Which was
I ran out of a terabyte.
Well, so no, they were doing a megabyte of storage, which was enough to handle 10,000 industries, but just barely. It's all text. It's all numbers. Well, so a byte is what, one character? They only had a megabyte of storage, but they were very good at doing other things, just not storing them. Memory was very expensive apparently at the time, so a megabyte of storage was for the Soviet Union, that was awesome. And so they were, and these computers were doing 5 megaflops. So does anyone know what a flop is?
Isn't that one of them little 3.5-inch discs? Yeah.
Isn't that Jurassic Park 3?
Ooh, I forgot about that one.
Exactly.
That is the very definition of a flop.
All right. So here's the thing. So a flop is basically a floating point calculation. So it's it can do 5 million. And a floating point calculation is a specific kind. It has something to do with decimal point. I don't know. I'm not a computer scientist. But they could do 5 so 5 megaflops. That's 5 million floating point calculations per second. So it's 5 million calculations a second, which it's more than I can do.
More than I can do.
Right. And so 5 megaflops. Just for example, the computer I've got that I took my notes on, this thing has at least a gigaflop.
That's after you crank it up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to rev it.
Yeah, exactly.
How many RPMs is your computer?
Well, I mean, I have a solid state hard disk, but if you have a I have solid state hard drive, but if you have a disk hard drive, they do actually spin. So, yeah. Oh. No, but
I got an A on that test.
So there are basic there are computers computers consumers can buy, not military or government supercomputers. Computers that you could buy if you had a lot of money that has teraflops.
By the way,
so we're exponentially.
I have a friend whose job it is in the Marines is 70% of his job as a tech something in the Marines is to just fucking go out back and hit hard drives with a hammer.
Oh, that's percussive maintenance.
Literally, that's what he does with most of his day, other than just
That's awesome.
Assemble computer parts.
That's wild.
Your tax dollars at work.
Yeah. So at this point, the Soviet computers are running at that level. So by comparison, we use supercomputers now. At the time of this recording, mostly for things like weather modeling, astronomical calculations and materials testing and stuff. I don't know the exact numbers in 2018. In 2013, which is the last one I checked.
Controlling the weather with chemtrails is another one.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah. But basically, they're exceeding 10 quadrillion flops, which is 10 petaflops. We've gone. It's a thing. It's called.
Will there ever be a limit to the flops?
When you record 50 Shades of Grey.
How many flops is 50 Shades of Grey?
2, I think. Maybe they got a third one coming out.
Now we're on the third or fourth.
They got a third one coming out. No, but so we've had 100 billion-fold increase in computing power, and so we're not working with the same technology they had then. So this brings me back. So something I was gonna say is that
gay frogs.
Well, so what I was gonna say is it's important to I think as a socialist, it's important to answer like criticisms that have seeped into a lot of people's like understandings of economics and like how you run society. And I think one of those big, I mean, tell me if you've heard this one, but like one of those big criticisms is like planned economy doesn't work. Like it's inefficient. It leads to you're standing in line for basic economy or
you can't plan an economy. An economy plans itself.
Right, you're standing in line for basic commodities. There's shortages. There's famines. Everybody has the same car. Like all that stuff. But like, so there's been so much theorizing and researching about.
We all have the same fucking car too. It's just a different model of it.
They just look a little different. Yeah, I know.
Just don't plan your economy on pen and paper. You'll be fine.
Well, and that's exactly the thing. Is that like it is ridiculous to make this claim in the year of our Lord 2018. Like you cannot say like. We are not operating where they had where Cybersyn was. We're in a whole nother ballpark.
Like they were playing The Sims through the mail, and we're doing it on our phones.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
What a good comparison.
That's awesome. No, and like, yeah, and
back in my day, we had to play The Sims in real life.
I had to go. Yeah, when I wanted to play The Sims, I just had to go get a job and like. Delete my own ladder in my own pool.
I had to burn my own home with my own self in it.
Yeah, but
I'm not even going to touch that one. I do some bad things to Sims.
A lot of people do. No, but so and the other thing I was going to say, yeah. So like it's ridiculous. Like we have the technology is so completely different, and like with the advent that they're working on of quantum computing, where you can do multiple operations simultaneously.
That's still befuddling to me.
Well, yes, and I'm not a computer scientist, so I don't understand how it works. I just understand that, like, I guess it kind of does. But
right.
like,
I'm there was a time where I was actively trying to figure that out, but yeah, I'm not a computerologist either. So
but so the thing is that like
computerologist,
the game has changed when it comes to computer science and like the actual technology that we could use to model an economy. So this idea of a planned economy, Marx in his writings doesn't talk a lot about like what a socialist or communist society would actually look like. He's mostly concerned with critiquing capitalism, which like that's fine, whatever.
That's
but like the few things he does write about, like in Critique of the Gotha Program, etc. He's talking about like for the lower stages of communism, you've got some system of like labor vouchers, like a system of exchange and allocation based on like hours worked producing goods and services. But then, like, workers are taxed to provide the pool.
I think we call that a paycheck.
Well, and so that's something I was saying before, is that we talk about, like, rationing money, or, like, rationing food. Like, we have food ration coupons. It's called dollars.
It's called the dollar.
Well, and so, there's a weird way of thinking about these things. So, what Marx was talking about was, like, I work for an hour and make a loaf of bread, and then I can come get a shirt that took an hour to make. But then, and I have a certificate, so I make that thing, I get a certificate, and then I give that to you in exchange for your thing. But then that certificate, like, is extinguished. Like, you can't use that and, like, save it and use it for more trading. Like, as soon as you buy something with, like, the fruit of your labor, then it's gone. You can't like accumulate.
It's like a dollar that expires after one use.
Right, because like if the dollar, like $1 is based on like 1 hour of work, and like obviously it's a complicated.
What if you just yeet and conquer the bread?
Just conquest of bread is what they say is important.
Just yeet your way to communism. Fuck counter-revolutionaries, they don't exist.
But so like a lot of so the technology is completely different. The infrastructure for like wild things already exists. Like look at Walmart, which has an incredible infrastructure, like technological infrastructure, economic infrastructure. It's just like a horrific corporation that exploits like laborers on every level.
It's
the
impressive.
Infrastructure is amazing.
It's impressive. It's just sad.
Exactly like Amazon, in that like Amazon has an amazing system of distributing. I can order just about anything I want and get it at my house in like 3 days. That's amazing. It's just built on incredible amounts of human misery.
It's like the universe and nihilism. Like the universe is
that could be capitalism's catchphrase. Built on incredible amounts of human misery.
Well, no, what it
is, you can get things in 3 days.
Yeah,
no, like it's an amazing efficient.
You can be sadder faster.
It's an amazing efficient machine. It's just the gas you pour in is human blood.
Oh.
So,
whoa.
But if these were nationalized, like if they were taken away from the profit motive, if we were able to use these in environmentally like efficient ways and ways that valued all the workers in there, then we could do amazing things with our technology.
Without Bezos, I mean, who would have ever come up with the idea of distributing products to other people?
Man, I don't want to talk about Bezos.
That's genius.
I'm not
genius.
I can't joke about it because I'm just angry. No, but here's kind of where my thing's gonna finish, and now we're gonna go into some other segments. But a lot of leftists seem to be kind of hesitant to formulate what a socialist society would actually look like. Which that's fine. I get it, considering how far we are from actually being able to implement that society. Unfortunately, I mean, it makes sense. We're also as leftists, we're trying to fight against the horrific crimes, excessive capitalism, human rights violations, and it's hard to find the energy to also envision a whole new world at the same time. That's hard, and so even if you are imagining a socialist society, it can seem sort of utopian in the sense that things a lot of times when you're planning things, they turn out a little bit differently.
Whoa, what?
Weirdly enough.
When?
And it's an important goal of revolutionaries to respond to these changes and these material conditions and change our plans accordingly. It's dialectics, baby.
Not quite as awesome is still better than really shitty.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree. I absolutely believe that. And yeah, it's letting the what's the saying? It's letting the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Exactly. That's a good saying.
I didn't come. That's
no, you're taking credit for that.
No.
Oh no! Ethan, 2018.
That's our saying.
Oh yeah.
It's not someone else saying. We're collectivizing that saying.
Gotcha.
Consider your saying nationalized.
You can't just nationalize sayings.
Watch me fucking kulak.
Nationalized. So beyond that, there's also this this worry that we're proclaiming the end of history. As in once we get to communism, then humans have achieved our highest potential. And we all know how well everybody announcing the end of history goes. It happens every so often.
Thanks,
and
yeah, it happens probably once a year at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the 90s, there was the whole book that everyone loved, the Fukuyama. Hitler thought that. Rome thought that. The Greeks thought. Everyone's this. We're pretty much as far as we can go, you know. We've gone about as far as we can go, and then
we've yeeted our way as far as we can.
Yeah, but so
God, I hope so.
But so as a Marxist and somebody with a materialist who tries to have a materialist conception of history, I think the exact opposite is true. Communism is the beginning of history. Wow. It will be the first time that we actually stop being animals and get to start being human beings, when we're actually able to grapple with the important questions like meaning, love, struggle, mortality, all of these things without the threat of starvation or poverty or oppression. That's when we're going to be able to set ourselves apart from all the other animals on Earth. Yeah, and so yeah, I'll end my little section with so Salvador Allende, when he went on the radio on September 11th after the coup had started. You can listen to this recording. You can hear the explosions in the background. It's wild. And he said, "La historia es nuestra y la gente los pueblos." History is ours, and people make history. And so that's my feeling on planned economies and Project Cybersyn. It was an amazing.
It was an ambitious.
It was an incredible. It was incredibly ambitious. It was ahead of its time, and
it just didn't have enough time.
They didn't have enough time. Given more technology, given more time, they could have achieved amazing things, but they weren't. It was strangled in its cradle. So, anyway,
thanks, fucking CIA.
Thanks, CIA.
All right. Thank you so much, Ethan. I appreciate that. The next segment is called Seeing Red, where we pick the most obnoxious hot takes the dark caverns of the internet has to offer and read them to our comrades in an attempt to evoke the purest form of proletarian rage. Are you ready?
I am nothing but proletarian rage. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's try this rage out.
All right. This first one comes off of Quora, which is in response to somebody else's question, which was asked, who was worse, Allende or Pinochet?
Oh, God.
Like Adolf Hitler before him, Salvador Allende was elected...
Come on!
With a weak plurality, 36% for Allende in 1970, 44% for Hitler in 1933. And like Hitler before him, upon his election, Allende set about dismantling the democratic system that has made his election possible.
What the fuck?
Both Allende and Pinochet were anything but democratic, and both had violent gangs of armed supporters who killed, kidnapped, and terrorized their opponents.
Oh, the U.S. doesn't have any of those.
Radical centrism.
Allende was stripping the people of their basic rights, militarizing the political process with Cuban arms.
Sorry.
And the MIR and his Grupo de Amigos Personales, crippling the economy, impoverishing the people, and consolidating.
That was the United States.
And consolidating power under Marxist authority, provoking the Chamber of Deputies and Supreme Court to demand his removal, which he ignored. Pinochet, in contrast, after instituting free market reforms, which were extremely successful,
No! Fuck! Stop this.
oversaw the adoption of a democratic constitution,
Turn it
reestablished democracy.
Turn it off!
What? So, okay, you're telling me that the fucking democratically elected leader that was overthrown by the fucking CIA and replaced by a fucking dictator
And relinquished power.
that dictator is democratic? What the fuck?
And relinquished power voluntarily. I would not have wanted to live under either Allende or Pinochet, but on balance, Allende was the worst of the two.
All right, hold on. So no, I'm gonna get real serious here for a second. So the guy who sang, so there's a Chilean singer-songwriter named Victor Jara. He sang Allende's like campaign song Venceremos, which means we shall overcome. And he
The irony.
That sounds like a dictator song.
Of liberals always saying we should overcome. It's like
so Victor Jara, he was a singer-songwriter, and he so after the coup he got rounded up along with a lot of the other like people, like supporters of Allende, and a lot of them, there were thousands of people like 5,000 people stuffed into this like small stadium, like the size of like a high school gymnasium in Santiago. Yeah, so I don't remember what it was. I think it was just called the Chile Stadium at that point. And he was put in there, and they so he was a guitar player, and these and so he was singing for his for all the people in there, just to keep them like entertained, keep their spirits up, and at one point the guards, the Pinochet's men, they came, they found him, they pulled him aside, they broke his hands, and they said, now play the guitar. And they beat him within an inch of his life, and they were like, now sing, and he kept singing, and they took him out and they shot him 34 times. And like, that's just one story of the fucking horrific stuff that Pinochet was like did over his like fucking almost 20 year reign.
But this says that he stepped down voluntarily.
Yeah.
For what? I mean, he was like
yeah, but so did fucking
100
Stalin.
years old. Like he was like 100 years old at that point. I mean, it was that's disgusting. Like he was a monster. That's disgusting.
All right,
Go to the next one.
this next one, probably appropriately, comes from alternatehistory.com.
okay.
Off to a good start.
From member Salvador79.
Okay.
And this is in response to whether a planned economy works or whether it's valid or not.
Okay, that's a valid question.
Okay. They say, with Marx and Engels, no. The paradigm was always the working class takes control of the means of production, not the state plans the economy. Lenin, on the other hand, has written a short explanation about how socialism would resemble the mail office, if I remember correctly. And that was, again, if my memory does not betray me, years before the October Revolution.
What? That jumps around a lot.
I'm very confused.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So like Marx and Engels definitely didn't write about like state central planning. They talked about like the dictatorship of the proletariat. Like they mentioned like taking control of the state, which obviously Lenin elaborated on several years later. But like What? That just doesn't make sense.
Also, if central planning is invalid, then how does he explain Mao's Great Leap Forward?
Well, and I mean, well, and like I mean, obviously, I told you there were a lot of issues with like Soviet planning, but like they still raised life expectancy.
Right, and without central planning, the Soviets wouldn't have even won World War II.
Well, and we talk about central planning, but like even when you get to like look at any capitalist country, like the United States is centrally planned. It's just the planning is in the interests of the bourgeoisie. Like you look at how like the distribution of like subsidies
so
and
really,
funding. Like
really,
central planning is a real thing. It just depends on who is benefiting.
The more difficult question is to name a country which does not have central planning.
Well, you got to remember, we got the saying, failure to plan is planning to fail.
Right.
That goes the same for economy, too.
Exactly.
So libertarians are just fucked. Like,
Well,
it only works on
and so that's what I'm talking about. And so a lot of like what I was talking about like 45 minutes ago, what libertarians, they really focus on this idea of like, oh, well, they really like Mises and Hayek, like, oh, there's this problem of calculation, like you just can't calculate, you gotta let the market figure that out. But like the market doesn't do that. It literally only does that in like laboratory, like in a petri dish.
Right. Right. Only when every single variable is accounted for, and
Exactly.
when you know what the future variables will be or what the future influences will be.
And even under the best of circumstances with like a capitalist economy, you have wealth inequality. Like even on paper,
Right.
you have poverty. Like that doesn't seem like something that works to me. So next.
Next.
Whack.
All right, the next one is off of Quora. This is by a Ryan P. Long, who has a bachelor in economics, former research economist, sometimes contributed to economic blogs.
Well, it depends. I guess it depends on the blog.
Wait. Contributes consensually or non-consensually? Because there is a difference.
Uh-oh.
Hey, all right. He says, planned economies don't work because they lack prices.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
prices are the means by which we decide how much of what thing to produce. It might not seem like a problem if you overproduce wheat until you realize that you've underproduced vaccines. The cool thing about free markets is that they solve all of those problems without any central authorities having to make a plan.
All right, so I have exactly the right response for this. Okay, so there's a book. I was going to recommend a couple books at the end.
Introduction to
I
economics.
guess I can do this. Well, no. So there's one. It's called Towards a New Socialism. By
yes, I'm
there's
currently in the
a-
process of reading this
it's Towards a New Socialism by Paul Cockshott and
Greatest
listen,
name. Greatest name ever.
I was hoping it wasn't pronounced that way, but it turns out it is. No, so it's Towards a New Socialism by Paul Cockshott and Alan Cottrell. And so basically,
The second name isn't as cool. He should change his name.
and so what so there were a couple. They were British guys writing in like the very late '80s, early '90s, talking. They're computer scientists talking about like how you could have a planned economy using computer technology, all this stuff. Anyway, so they wrote this book, and it's funny. There was so the von Mises organization. They have a website where they publish all kinds of like libertarian shit. And like on their front page, they published this guy who was responding to this book Towards a New Socialism, and he conceded that like, okay, this is a coherent intellectual opposition to the Austrian School of Economics, and okay, yes, you've demolished the argument that socialist calculation is too complex to be feasible. Like, I'll grant you those things, but like, and then he goes into these other things. But so this book, you got to read this book, Towards the New Socialism. They just, what I was talking about earlier with like prices and stuff, that's based on this idea that the market is a computer. It's calculating inputs and outputs. Replace it with a fucking computer. We have the computers now. We don't need the market anymore.
True.
In the garbage.
So, like,
next.
Like,
No.
So I really question this person's definition of what a working economy looks like. Does overproducing and underdistributing food make an efficient economy? Because
The cool thing about free market is that they solve all of the problems without a central authority.
okay, so then why do people starve?
Well, it takes them 3 decades to solve the problem.
Right, and a bipartisan system which is more focused on I guess lobbyists and investor support than actually solving the problem. So what part of that exactly is efficient?
And just this
Specifically, like name one specific example of any aspect of our economy that is efficient. Go ahead, I'll fucking wait.
He's got a bachelor's degree. Okay.
Bachelor's degree in economics.
I accidentally got an associate's degree. What does it tell you about fucking degrees?
Just this idea that like, prices. It's been rebuffed. That's 100 years ago they were talking about like, prices are how we do whatever. Like, we're past that, bro.
I like to imagine that's this guy's voice. Like, can you just read all that?
That was my Jordan Peterson impression.
Oh well, surprise, surprise! It's actually Jordan Peterson writing that question right there.
All right. The irony is that Taylor literally
cultural Marxism is a huge problem in our society.
Sorry.
That's totally
I literally accidentally got an associate's degree. So the fact that this guy got a bachelor's degree doesn't mean fucking shit.
The next one is from a Yahoo Answers where somebody asked free market and centrally planned economy question.
Because only smart things come from Yahoo Answers.
Of course. And let me tell you, Dean M has the answer.
Okay. Wait, sorry. What was the question again?
Denim.
Free market and centrally planned economy question mark. Which one is better? I'm assuming they're asking. Okay, so the response comes from Dean M, who says, the free market system places all the emphasis on the individual. That means the individual is free to choose what products to buy, where to work, how much to work, etc.
How much to work?
How much to
Since
work?
when? Since when have I had any choice on how much I'm going to work?
You can choose to stop living and die.
Right.
Yeah,
like
you can choose to be homeless and like hang out outside.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, in a centrally planned economy, people are told what job they will do. They are told how much of a product they get.
I'm told that much now.
They're expected to work a lot, and they receive little in return. The communist...
Okay.
That sounds bad. I wonder what that would be like to not have that happen.
The communist mantra is, from those according to their ability, and to those according to their need. This may sound great, except it doesn't work in reality. People respond to incentives. If the most effective way of receiving a reward is to act needy rather than to work hard, then guess what people are going to do? One may say that the disadvantage of the free market economy is that it's very inequitable.
I may say that, not just one. I am saying that right now.
People. They're not calling you out.
I am going on record saying I think
Ethan triggered.
This is a reflection of his hookup strategy here. If you act needy, you'll be more successful than if you work hard.
All right, let's get the fucking thing out here. All right, while this is true, if you compare a poor person from a free market economy to an average one from North Korea or Cuba, you'll likely find that the poor person from the free market economy is better off than the one from the communist country. So if you'd rather be poorer as long as everyone else is poor too, then you can consider the inequality of income from free markets to be a disadvantage and the equality under central planned to be an advantage. I'll say again, generally those that are poor in a free market economy are better off than the average person from a centrally planned economy.
Coming at you from the perspective of somebody who runs 911 calls on an ambulance, okay? I run plenty of homeless people, especially in the winter, especially in Colorado Springs, where homeless people constantly have pneumonia. People who cannot afford adequate nursing homes, which are like for-profit nursing homes, constantly trying to cut costs as much as possible, especially on fucking nursing education. God damn, for the love of God, CNAs, please recognize sepsis. So anybody telling me that an old person in a nursing home that is for-profit and committing Medicare fraud, or a homeless person with pneumonia on the streets constantly going back to the hospital to be treated and then sent back out onto the streets so they can get pneumonia again, is more efficient than somebody with free access to healthcare? Fuck off. No.
Now, I hear this argument all the time, and it always comes down to, in my head, what you're basically telling me is that given the choice, you'd be a lazy fuck and just expect to be taken care of.
Boom.
I mean, like, given this situation, yeah, I can work. I will work. I'll help others. He's saying I would just sit back and let someone else just fucking do for me.
Right. I don't know a single communist that's that way.
No.
I know a
It's all
plethora
capitalist.
of capitalists that will
If
sit
you
back and
cannot
play fucking
survive
Fortnite
off
or
your
PUBG
labor,
their entire life.
you love capitalism because you're surviving off other people's labor.
These are the same people that are like, if I win the lotto,
Yeah, that's their retirement plan, man.
These are the same people that play the fucking lotto.
Well, and so and I mean,
401k. I think
obviously
you mean
there are
dollar scratchers.
So like, yeah, and they mentioned like poor people in the U.S. compared to people in Cuba. Like, obviously there are a million
Pick
things.
two countries that have the same standard of living.
Right, exactly.
And compare the
Obviously,
poor people
there are a million things affecting
Like the
Cuba's-
USSR and the US in
Like
the
obviously, there are a
1950s
million
to
things
1990s.
Exactly.
affecting Cuba's economy. But like even then, even with the economy poor, if you look at things for like criteria for social welfare that aren't fucking GDP, like happiness, life expectancy, education, places like Cuba fucking kick our ass. And so it's so stupid. This just like, well, your average, you make like 70, like even your poor people make like $20,000 as opposed to people like in Cuba, maybe they make like $5. It's like, well,
Well, it costs
you
them
can't compare
$10.
those things.
Yeah.
Things don't cost the same. And plus, like, even if
It doesn't matter how
I'm
much money.
sputtering and being inarticulate because like this is stupid.
What
right.
Ethan's trying to say is it doesn't matter how much money you make in the U.S., the cost of goods and the cost of living will always rise, no matter what. Even if your wages stay stagnant, which they have since the 1970s, the costs of living, the cost of housing, the cost of medical care, the cost of fucking insurance is constantly increasing, will keep increasing, will never stop increasing until we get rid of this system, period.
It's the tendency of the rate of profit to fall.
Right. So to say like the free market, which is constantly trying to extract as much wealth as it possibly can out of you to benefit the 1% who own the means of production, is more efficient than a balanced economy trying to increase industrialization and working conditions and living conditions as much as possible as the goals. First of all, is like comparing apples and oranges, and second of all, is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever fucking heard. Dean M, whatever the fuck your name is, you are certified a fucking moron.
Hey, don't say that. He sounds like the average American to me.
All right.
You gotta educate.
All right. The last.
Ooh, let's watch the reaction.
You saved the best for last.
I
Yes.
saved the best for last. This one is a comment on a blog that is called "Sorry Lefties, but Pinochet looks better every day."
Yeet.
I'm already getting rowdy. Like,
All right, and this one is by, I'm going to call him out, William L. Ginsert.
Yes.
William says, "I graduated grammar school in 1972."
The fuck is grammar school?
Elementary school.
Elementary
yeah,
school.
that's what they used to call it.
They used to call it that because they had to teach you to talk.
Hope. But I was always...
don't do that anymore.
Ooh,
We got you.
I'm a high school teacher. So.
But I was always political, and Pinochet was one of my favorite foreign leaders.
Come on! What the fuck, you fascist? Jeez.
I followed his career from the beginning. I was also a big proponent of Milton Friedman and the Chicago Boys.
There it is. Boom.
He was also a big proponent of Ronald Reagan, especially in...
Big proponent of murder.
Right, yeah. Especially in
God
reference to
damn.
the treatment of the
Hey,
Black Panthers
we
in
So
haven't-
long as the
California.
people he
Halfway
doesn't
through this
like aren't the
comic.
ones dying, it's fine.
All right. It caused a lot of problems for me in high school, where I was always the only conservative. But they were much more...
There's a reason for that.
Reggie,
shithead.
this nerd.
But
Go
they were
back in
much
time,
more tolerant.
Shove this nerd in a locker. God damn.
But they were...
What he's really saying is, ever since high school, people were smarter than me.
He's saying I was an asshole and nobody liked me.
Yeah, exactly. How come nobody likes me? 'Cause I'm a dick. Sorry, you should finish.
Yeah.
But they were much more tolerant then and a lot less political.
Because they didn't know as much. They were in high school.
Let him finish.
But
You gotta let him go.
what he did for the economy of Chile saved not only his country, but the entire continent.
What are you
According to
talking
who?
about?
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? This gets good. This gets good. The story of an assassination attempt, I'm not sure when, and the Wikipedia on him is a travesty, I found particularly interesting. His limo driver drove in reverse at speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour and did a 180-degree turn while switching to drive to escape the gunman. I trained myself to do the same in the Orchard Beach parking lot.
That doesn't make it. What? I don't
That's
know.
so weird.
So basically,
that
he's
his
saying, I've been
transmission is
smarter
capable
than
of
you
handling
since
that."
high school, and I'm a dumbass. I could have killed children in that parking lot, but they probably disagree with my
I
political
spend my
views.
time
70 miles
worshiping
an hour?
CIA-backed dictators
That's
and
crazy.
speeding backwards in
Who is
high school
this?
parking lots.
This is the kind of person that's like, Hitler might not have been the worst guy. I mean, he
had
did
some
he
good
did bring
ideas.
Germany's economy back
The
together.
guy that compared Allende to Hitler.
Yeah.
Everybody I don't like is basically Hitler.
That's
Seriously.
crazy.
Okay, so
I don't understand.
do it up. Answer it.
I'm befuddled by this. whole
There's no
comment.
question there.
There isn't. This
Okay.
isn't
It's
a
not. It's
question.
just
This is
bragging about how
this is
I
just
just did
like-
respond.
I don't understand. How can you be this way?
This is- so I can.
You know what they say, man? If it barks like a dog and it walks like a dog, you've got a tiny dick.
No, this guy, that's crazy to me. Like, so, I mean, maybe he was actually taught this. I just don't know. Like, maybe he was actually taught that, like,
Yeah, I
You
think
should-
conservatism
I know they are.
is a learned trait.
Well,
It's
it
just
is.
like
Who does he
hatred.
think is trying to assassinate him?
You fucking leftists.
yeah, that's true. Antifa's coming
Yeah.
after him. They're gonna
Those damn Antifas and the BLMs.
Yes, exactly. yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
Or the worst ones are the BLM Antifa.
The
That's
gay
right.
frogs. They're
Yeah, exactly.
coming they're coming
Oh, they're
for
not trying to kill him though. They just want to give him a little smooch.
Yeah, no, I just.
Is that something you're pointing
Yeah,
about, really?
that's too ridiculous to like respond to in
it's
real life.
not even a question.
There's no
It's
question.
just
He's
a
just saying,
statement of
I
idiocy.
I was an idiot in high school, and I did a dumb.
No, it's-
I did stupid things.
It's not even I was an idiot in high school. It was I paid attention to politics because I was so much smarter than everyone else.
Or I
but
thought
I
I
was
was
a
so much-
conservative,
Yeah.
and they hated me because of my conservative values. It's because conservative values are shit. It's like being an asshole and trying to find excuses for it.
He trained himself to drive like an asshole in a parking lot
That-
just
Yeah.
to emulate Pinochet's limo driver.
That
You
feels
talk
okay.
about the God complex.
That feel into intelligence.
Okay, now I'm just going to glaze over the fact that I don't know where the Orchard Beach parking lot is. But Orchard Beach sounds like a place where a bunch of fucking hipsters go to get like yogurt drinks. And he could have killed someone in a goddamn parking lot because he's afraid to get assassinated by someone that just thinks he's a dickhead.
Nope.
Maybe don't be a dick. People won't want to kill you, and you can drive like a normal non-dickhead.
True. Valid.
Turns out Orchard Beach is the only public beach in the Bronx, which is a
Oh, New York.
surprising, which is actually a historically black.
Which if he-
yeah,
if he-
so
if
he's
he
like
goes-
the one white guy in the Bronx.
There's
Like,
a lot of
I'm gonna
Right.
drive backwards.
Not only the one white guy in the Bronx, but the one white guy who thinks he's better than everybody else in the fucking Bronx.
oh yeah,
Like,
I'm sure if you
so
asked him
now-
about his time growing up, well, that's why he got beat up. 'Cause-
Right.
Yeah,
And
he grew up a poor
fucking
black
deserved it.
child.
So what you're telling me, William, is that you got beat up and you never fucking learned?
Oh, Billy, you poor son of a bitch.
All right.
All right,
just
let's
owning
see.
this
So that
guy
segment
versus-
is what we like to call Seeing Red. So I'm going to toss it back to 8-Hop, who's our host for the night.
Thank you so much to Justin, James, and Ethan for coming on tonight to talk about Project Cybersyn. Thank you so much for everyone listening. Some suggested reading is in the show notes. Please don't forget to rate and review on your favorite podcast app. Like us on Facebook.com/ProlesPod and follow us on Twitter @ProlesPod. If you have any feedback or topic ideas, feel free to send us an email at prolesoftheroundtable@protonmail.com.
Aquí va todo el pueblo de Chile, aquí va la unidad popular, campesino, estudiante y obrero, compañeros de nuestro cantar, el sarmiente de nuestra bandera, la mujer ya se ha unido al clamor, la unidad popular vencedora será tumba del yanqui opresor. Venceremos, venceremos, con Allende en septiembre a vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, la unidad popular al poder. Venceremos, venceremos, con Allende en septiembre a vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, la unidad popular al poder. Con la fuerza que surge del pueblo, una patria mejor hay que hacer, a golpear todos juntos y unidos, al poder, al poder, al poder. Sin la justa victoria de Allende, la derecha quisiera ignorar, todo el pueblo resuelto y valiente, como un hombre se levantará. Venceremos, venceremos, con Allende en septiembre a vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, la unidad popular al poder.